This pass is obviously named after the Mkomazi River and displays a typical inverted vertical profile associated with a pass that drops down into a river valley and descends up the other side. It's a fairly long pass at 11.8 kilometers and has an altitude variance of 521 meters, which translates into an average gradient of 1 in 23. There are 34 bends, corners and curves to contend with, most of which have gentle arcs, but there are 2 sharp 90-degree corners on the northern side which do require careful driving. In earlier times, the river was known as the Mkomazi, mainly to suit the western tongue better, but today the spelling has reverted back to the original Zulu version. Starting in the south, at the highest point of the pass at an elevation of 883 meters, the road descends at a gradient of around 1 in 14 via an easy set of S-curves. The Mkomazi River rises in some of the highest eastward-facing slopes of the Drakensberg Mountains near the mighty Tabana and Klenyana. The river flows southeastwards towards the Indian Ocean, which it enters through a navigable estuary at Mkomazi, about 40 kilometers southwest of Durban. Its main tributaries are the Loteni, Nzinga, Mkomazana, Elands and Kobo rivers. Towns on the Mkomazi basin include Bulwer, Impandle, Ikopo, Craigieburn and Boston. The Mkomazi State Forest and the Mkomazi Wilderness Area are protected areas in the upper course of the Mkomazi River. The river is nationally and even internationally famous for its 2-day canoe race which is held on the river, known as the Umko. It's the second oldest river marathon and the only one which neither starts nor finishes in a city or town. It was first held in 1966 when the race was initially over 3 days. The overall distance has varied from 145 kilometers down to the present length of 68 kilometers. Famed as the roughest water race to be paddled in sprint boats, which make negotiating the category 1 to 4 rapids quite tricky. It also had the longest daily sections when the distance was over 130 kilometers over 2 days. The race is held in a remote and rugged valley, which makes access difficult and walking out a challenge if one should break a boat irreparably. Stories of paddlers spending a night in the valley before being able to walk out the next day have regularly made the national press and national radio. This premier wildwater race is organized by the Kingfisher Canoe Club of Durban and attracts around 180 to 300 paddlers annually. 2016 saw the 50th running of the event, remarkably the 50th consecutive participation of the winner of the very first race, Charles Mason. Mason has completed in 49 marathons, failing only in the 1970 event when he broke up 19 kilometers into the 145-kilometer race, one of the 4 long years in which the longest course was paddled from Hela Hela to the sea. The races had 2 starting points. One is Josephine's Bridge, which is featured in this video, and Hela Hela Bridge on the Richmond-Donnybrook Road. The river between Hela Hela and the number 8 rapid, 20 kilometers downstream, has the steepest gradient with a fall of 7.6 meters per kilometer and contains the toughest series of rapids as well. This section has been included in most but not all the races, and the races had many finishing points over the years, depending mainly on the weather, logistics and overland access. The first recorded trip down the river was in 1951 when Ian Player and Fred Schmidt paddled down from Josephine's Bridge to the sea at Mkomazi village, where the river flows into the Indian Ocean. Player was at the time famous for having won the first Dusi Canoe Marathon earlier that year and later became famous in wildlife conservation, especially for having saved the white rhino from extinction. They took 7 days to complete the 113-kilometer distance and were supported by friendly inhabitants of the valley when they ran out of supplies. Various other trips were undertaken, culminating in trips in 1965 and 1966, aimed specifically at the feasibility of holding a race, which necessitated scouting the river and roads along the banks of 2 accessible overnight campsites. Charles Mason was instrumental in that undertaking, succeeding in the scouting of the river and the access roads, and in persuading the powers that be to sanction the new race on the South African canoeing calendar. He went on to win the first race with Tank Rogers, narrowly beating Paul Chalupsky and Jimmy Potgieter. Once you've crossed the bridge in this pass, the trickier part of the pass awaits, where you will climb 215 meters in just 2 kilometers. The gradients are steeper here at 1 in 7, and the corners come thick and fast. There are two sharp corners of 90 degrees with very tight arcs. The first is a left-hander, which occurs at the 9.9 kilometer mark, and the second is a similarly sharp right-hander at the 10.8 kilometer point. Both of these require a substantial reduction in speed. As can be seen in this video, you do need to watch out for drivers ignoring the barrier lines.